race. How how have you found, or what is your thesis on why we have we're more willing to explore the question of why someone is reacting this way, at least in our school systems, for young white girls, and then in across town, or even got in the same school, we are not willing to explore that with young black girls. Why is that, and how do we overcome that?
Well, I think girls in general are often sort of presented as a monolithic group.
Mm,
And historically, I remember writing something in 2002 and searching for data on Black girls aged 12 to 17, and I could find very few pieces of scholarship that centered Black girls.
mm,
And while there was a growing, body of work exploring Black womanhood, Black girlhood was distinctly absent from our, real construction of identity and understanding. And so, for me, I was like, what is that? you know?
mm,
And how does that play out then in how we see Black girls and if we see Black girls at all? And so, I talk a bit about W.E.B. Du Bois's articulation of double consciousness
yeah.
and how that two-ness for Black girls and women is actually a three-ness at the minimum, and
Mm,
that third identity around gender and that component around gender cannot be erased when we're talking about the experiences of life
yeah.
among this population. At no point, do they stop being one or the other or any of the all, right?
Right.
And so, that impacts how we move forward. For girls in schools, most of it has been constructed around the identity of white girls. So girlhood is even constructed with the idea that our conversations about girlhood have been normed to the experiences of white middle class girls. So
Mm,
poor white girls are often erased, and anyone who is not a middle class white person, who is female and
right.
identifies as such, is typically sort of left out of our public imagination when we talk about girlhood. And so that has been problematic because even, when you look at the kinds of books that are offered, the narratives that are shared, the ways in which we construct learning, how that is, brought into spaces like schools, really does negatively impact Black girls who don't see themselves there at all. It's interesting because last week was the United States of Women Summit in Washington, D.C., which was a White House convened um, summit of 5,000 women and girls to talk about the conditions of women and girls in the US. And I thought it was beautiful that there were so many Black girls who were a part of that discussion about women and girls. And I'm sure that's not by accident when you have a Black First Lady and a
Hmm.
Black president, that we see such an intentional centering of Black girlhood
Hmm.
in a conversation about girlhood. But in the context of this was Marley Diaz, who is the founder of 1,000 Black Girl Books. She, is a very young, super intelligent, high performing girl who recognized that there was an absence of books that centered Black girls in them. That she said, I was tired of reading a whole bunch of books about white boys and their dogs, right? And
Right.
that in school, that's all I was getting. And so what she did with her, powerhouse mom was put together a strategy to correct that.
Mm,
And so what you see is this tendency for Black girls to try to engage in behaviors that either correct what they see as problematic or function in a way that still operates um, in defiance of these structures of oppression. And so when they operate in ways that are dismissive, like one of the cases in the book where a girl didn't want to read a book about slavery because she felt like it was, insulting to her. Part of it is because of how the instruction was taking place. She was a girl who was in detention, reading a book about slavery, and she felt like it was reinforcing her subservience.
wow.
And so one could read that and see, okay, she was triggered by this book because she was in an institution very much like that of slavery, right?
Right,
And
right.
so she didn't want to read a book about a happy slave. She wanted to read a book about something else. And her act of defiance was read certainly as that. It was read as an affront to the authority of the educator, and she was placed outside of the class, which was more harmful to her than sitting there. I don't know. Actually, that's arguable. Maybe one could say that she was better served by not having to internalize
The
the
book.
material
Yeah.
that would try to reinforce her subservience. But you know, these are the questions that we're dealing with, right? These are the things that we're dealing with in real time that have not really been interrogated because there hasn't really been the centering of the experiences of Black girls. So I'm hopeful that with Push Out and other emerging research that's coming, you know, that we are able to have a much more robust conversation about the experiences of Black girls, how they might be different from other girls. Many of the girls in this book are Black Latina, who are often not discussed either in conversations about Latinas or conversations about Black girls. So it was
Wow.
really important for me to include them. Same with trans girls. Who are often left out of conversations about feminine identity and the experiences of girls in schools. So, you know, the inclusion of these narratives was really important as we start this conversation. I
Yeah.
don't think we're anywhere near the conclusion of it.